So this is yet again another band that I've just recently found. Now I came across this band by basically liking Borealis. Now for those of you who haven't checked Borealis, or you have because I've reviewed them, you will know that there is a female vocalist who has guested in their last two albums, Purgatory as well as The Offering. Now I really like getting into the music, so I kind of wanted to know exactly where she came from, if she's in the metal scene, what her band would be like, because I like trying to get every kind of piece out of bands, albums, absolutely everything, so I dig in hard. So I figured out that her name is Sarah D, and after a while of searching, because it was quite difficult, I found this band. So she is the lead singer of this band. So if you heard her in Borealis, then that female singer is the main singer of this band. Now this is the second album, Darkest Day, so they have had an album before this called Reunion. Now I have heard that, and to go over it a bit just to see what it was like and a quick gist of what I thought. Reunion was an album about a wife who loses a husband, and then she's basically trying to find him again, which is kind of like Borealis's album Purgatory, in that the mum dies and then the girl commits suicide to go back with her mum. So the stories there are actually quite similar. Also, the lead singer, Sarah D, obviously you've heard her in Borealis, so you can draw that comparison. But then Matt of Borealis, the lead singer, is featured in, I think, 2 songs in that album. So now he's the special guest. So there is a lot of comparisons there as well. Also, the lead guitarist of this band seems to be very heavily influenced. His playing style does seem to come across like a lot from Borealis's guitarists, as in he does some amazingly musical interludes in intros, or after like the first chorus leading into a second verse. His solos as well have a lot of not as much as Borealis. Borealis has a lot of heart and a lot of melody in a lot of their solos, but they can use speed. This guy also has that. He has a lot of melody, a lot of feel, and a lot of heart, but he tends to be more in the line of speed. So the Borealis guitarists seem to have a lot more musicality in their solos. This guy, though he has it, seems to go a bit more in the kind of fast area and put speed in mostly every solo. As far as the album went, though, the album was quite dry, so kind of like Purgatory, where it's just a straightforward album with the guitarist doing the leads, but other than that in verses, it's basically just guitar and vocals. You don't really get high energy keys, you don't get high energy orchestration and choirs and things. There's none of that. So it was quite cut and dry. And then the lead singer, although in Borealis I really like her, in her actual album I wasn't actually keen, and it was the big drop-off point for that album. The leads were incredible, everything was incredible, but Sarah, unfortunately, did sour it a little, because her voice is so high-pitched, that it's just so cutting, so high-pitched, and with such a dry sounding album, there's no roundness at all, and there's no thickness to the sound, so everything is really piercing and everything. Some of the choruses where she gets a bit more kind of high energy, she kind of rounds her voice out a bit more, which definitely cushions the shrieking pitch of her. And there I really like her. In some choruses she really is good. But then each track, for a lot of them, all are very similar. They're just kind of heavy, same kind of tempo. They change things slightly, but it's all exactly the same until you get to the pretty much the end of the album, the final 3 tracks or something. And then they actually change it up a bit by putting some melody parts into the songs and do melody. Unfortunately, the first track they do this in is a complete rip-off of a Borealis song, which I believe is called Where We Started. The verse of Where We Started is the complete verse of that first melodic track in that reunion album. So that is incredibly unfortunate, but even still it was great to actually get a change of pace because everything was just so similarly paced. So yeah, unfortunately that first album Reunion, Sarah, I found her voice way too piercing, and it was all pretty much exactly the same, just always piercing. I can tell she has a good voice, but there's no range and there's no roundness to her voice, and then her as well as the band didn't really seem to be like synergized. They both seemed to be completely outside themselves. What the band was doing was great and what she was doing was great, but they weren't working together. Her voice was not connecting with the band, which made her voice come across very shrieky, and then the band didn't fit how high she was being either. As I said, in some choruses the band did synergize and connect, and then they worked and it sounded incredible, but then the majority of the album sounded the same. So it is a very flawed album, but the guitarist with his solos and everything, he is absolutely phenomenal. Sarah did have a good voice, but for the majority of it, it wasn't working. That may have been a bit of her fault because there didn't seem to be a lot of range. It could have been the band not supporting her voice very well. There's a fair few reasons. So there is a lot of talent and potential there, but it didn't really come out. So here we have the second album, Darkest Days, and I've actually spoken to the lead guitarist of this band, who said that this album is not really along the same lines as Borealis, because I did kind of say this does play a lot like Borealis, especially the album Purgatory, and he said it is more of its own thing, but in the same kind of genre. Now, I didn't want to really go and tell him, is there going to be a lot more, changes and different stuff, instead of every song just being the exact same kind of pace and style. I didn't want to do that, and I didn't want to say, is Sarah improved, because I didn't really want to basically go out and then insult them. Even though I'm not being mean, I'm just basically asking because it's how I felt and it's, constructive, but I didn't really want to bombard him with it. So getting into this album, the first track is Overture. It's an intro track, but it only lasts 1 minute 37 seconds, so it's not one of these intro tracks where the band's not playing and the intro goes on for like 4 bloody minutes and there's just nothing there. So it is short and it does play into the first track at least. So you can basically say that Overture is the first track, so it's not like two separate things, because sometimes there's an intro track that lasts about 4 minutes, the band's not even there, then it ends, and then you get the first track, so it's like, there's no point, I'll just start on the first. This you can just say is a massive build-up for the first track, and you can then argue, because it goes into My Darkest Days, it is just one really big, long song. So you can actually enjoy this intro instead of basically just saying it's just completely worthless, no point, skip it. So the intro starts very moody. It's quite dark, it's quiet, it builds up in volume. A male choir comes in, they sound extremely dark. They're not saying words, it's just, dark male choir noise, just type of thing. I can't do it because I can't sing. Eventually female join in with the male choir. Both harmonising each other, so one's not doing anything different. So you start with males, the females eventually come in, and they harmonise together and everything. It's very dark. You get orchestrations coming in. It brightens the sound up a little bit, but it's still slightly dark. Near the end of the song, the drums come in and basically just ramping the song as it comes to its conclusion. Now, Overture does come to a conclusion. It does start dying out, but it does start dying out into the first few seconds of My Darkest Days. So, yeah, My Darkest Days is the first actual track of the band. The intro plays a little into the track, but quickly the full band comes in and pretty much heavy off the bat. So when that intro ends in My Darkest Days, the band they're all there immediately, and it's heavy. It's the sound is you know, quite heavy, so the guitars ain't piercing, they got a bit of roundness to them. The orchestra is still remaining here throughout the entire song and throughout all the other tracks, so this is a good thing. Because, as I say, in the first album, Reunion, I didn't really get a lot of kind of key-heavy stuff, everything was quite dry. But because the keys have orchestras put into them, so you've got orchestras and then some songs you've got choirs, it makes everything seem a lot bigger and grander and fuller, and just like there's so much more going on musically. So it makes everything a hell of a lot more interesting with a lot more layers of obviously instruments and singing and stuff. So it just makes everything a lot bigger. So already I'm glad that this is already here. The guitarist does a lead, so it's basically the whole band's there, and then eventually he then comes in and does a lead. It's not a lead solo, it's basically just a slightly quick-paced interlude lead. He does it a lot, which is great because it just always makes the song exciting and not just dull and empty chords. It just adds elevations and high parts and high points, and you can, instead of just waiting for the singer to come in, it's just like I can enjoy this intro because there is actually something interesting actually happening. So I'm not actually just waiting for the song to actually start, it's like I'm already enjoying it because I've got this amazing lead happening. When he ends his lead, the vocalist doesn't start, he ends, and it then goes to a very kind of dark guitar riff, which just kind of comes in and comes out, so it's just da-da-dun, da-da-dun, you know, dark chugs on the guitar, bit of a pause, come back again. So that's going on, and then you've got a choir in there as well. So again, there's quite a fair bit going on before the actual singer comes in. But when the singer comes in, she still sounds fairly high, but as I said, with the orchestra, it actually helps her out. So this track, My Darkest Days, is probably the most kind of simplistic metal song. Not that it's simple, it's like a 5-minute track, and there is things going on, but I'm basically saying it is not doing anything too grand and doing different type of things and mixing a lot. It's just, this is a heavy track, it's metal, it's 5 minutes, and that is basically it. It's just a straightforward metal track, but it's, you know, proper metal, not just some kind of Bullet for My Valentine really simplistic bull crap. So yeah, it's a really simple heavy metal song. As I say, the singer is still quite high. Her voice is a bit kind of rounder compared to the first album, Reunion, so her voice is more easy to deal with here. And then, as I say, the orchestra kind of comes in to fill the sound up and everything, so it just kind of, it's in a way adds a bit of a cushion to it, instead of the guitar just being kind of dark and dry and straightforward, and then her being extremely high-pitched and straightforward. Because there's orchestra there and everything, rounding sounds out and everything, it actually makes it so her highness is actually welcome, and she can actually do it without it just being like, this is just so dry and overbearing. It's actually like, okay, now that this is here, you can do that as much as you like and you sound great. So it is really good. So yeah, the singer still sounds fairly high, but the orchestra helps her out. The pre-chorus, there's a really cool bit where she says the line, you can run and hide away. And what I like about this is when she says you can run and hide away, it is then repeated in the background, faded. And it's nothing much, it's just I kind of like it just because obviously her voice is getting laid, and when she's in the background, it's not, you know, she's in the foreground really high pitch. It's a high pitch, but it's turned down and it's in the kind of background. So it's adding variety to her voice, which wasn't in Reunion. So even though it's just a short little bit, I really kind of like the fact that it's just there. So yeah, I really like it. It adds more than just the basic singing. The solo obviously is incredible. The guitarist definitely knows how to basically structure a solo. So instead of just going in there and just basically sitting down without really thinking about it and just say, okay, just turn the song on where my solo is going to go, and then just whittle something out really quickly. He understands that he needs to have different parts to his guitar solo. It can't just be of the one thing. So he'll start it off maybe quick, or he may start it off with a bit of a melody. He may start it off slow. He may do a bit of kind of blues, a bit kind of a jazzy kind of element thing. So he knows to put variety into his solo and then pace things out a bit instead of just racing through all these different things. Each section has its time frame, so if it starts with a kind of nice melody, he'll do that for a while, then he'll do a bit of a quick pace part, but he won't have it overstay his welcome. He knows how long to do a part and then shift. So he knows how to do a solo and how to go about it. So yeah, the solo has ranges, it has different elements to it, and nothing overstays, nothing's drawn out overly long. It's just an incredible solo that is just so well executed and well done. And that kind of persists through the entire album. He is just absolutely incredible. So if you really like guitarists, this guy all the time absolutely nails it. It's not just like a thing of he's really good and that's kind of it. It's just like he is absolutely great. He's a phenomenal guitarist. Really, really great. The last chorus is different to the other choruses because you have the lead guitar going on plus the echoes of the female singer. So as she's singing, sometimes she'll have her echoed self in the background going on, then you have the lead going on. So it just ends more epic and you don't have the same chorus to end it, so you've got something new, it's bigger, it's more epic and everything. So it's just an incredible way to end. So even though it is, like My Darkest Days is more of a like kind of straightforward metal track, you got an intro that has a fair bit of variety there. There's a great solo, the last chorus is great, and the vocals are actually really, really good. Now getting into the next track, Limbo. This is a fairly short track actually, Limbo. Just 3 minutes. Not just dead 3 minutes, it's in the 3-minute mark. But what's great about this is the song starts very musical. The lead is there kind of immediately, so there's a musical lead. There's a lot of keys and everything, so it's a really kind of high energy song, this one. But what is great about this is when the verse comes in. Now we've had a heavy song and now we're going to a verse which is actually got no guitars in it whatsoever. And although I'm saying that the guitarist is great, it's actually nice to have it without the guitars because it's just new, there's something new. In Reunion I had to go, goodness, 8-9 tracks until I actually got something new. So the fact that the next track I've got something completely different. And it's great. So the verse is just basically the bass and real heavy piano stuff. And the vocalist, because this is just bass and piano, she's not having to use a lot of high energy and high power to overcome that of the heavy guitars and stuff. So her voice is actually mellow. It's not melodic and like Evanescence type of singing. It's just she's relaxed, she's not pushing that hard. And because it's relaxed and everything, there is a bit more of a roundness naturally to her voice. So it's like, this is new, this is something I've not heard from her, this is range, this is variety to this singer. I'm glad to hear this. And again, this is something that's not been done by them, so this is completely new because there was nothing like this in Reunion, and I've just got one heavy track. Now I've got something that starts off with a great lead, it's got a lot of high energy, it's a great fun intro, and now I've got something which is bass, piano, and a nice roundness. It's not melodic, I'll say that, so it's not basically bass, drum, and singer, and it's depressing melodic. It's actually quite kind of fun and cheerful, kind of poppy in a way. And then when the chorus comes in, it just has absolute amazing energy. It is so powerful. The keys are back, so the keyboard, and they're so heavy, the keys in the chorus. And the lead singer, she's just belting some words out with unbelievable energy. So it's not just high, she actually, not just high straightforward pitch, she has like power to it and variety to it and different pitches, and it's just, her voice soars at parts and has so much power in others, and then amazing highs and everything, not just shrieking highs but controlled powerful highs. And then the keys, because they're so kind of heavy and everything, it's just, because of all of this, it's so high energy and so cheerful that it's actually just fun. And then the second verse, again, it's pretty much just the exact same thing. There is a lead before the second verse, so the lead guitarist again still bringing great energy and leads to it. And then you get a solo, which again is well structured and well executed. So even though it's just 3 minutes, so it is relatively a short song, it's completely different to the first track. It's completely different to anything that the first album did. So it's a complete change of pace, and it's such a fun, high-energy song with great vocals, a great high-energy chorus, which is just absolute fun. The verse is just so kind of relaxed and just easy, and goes at a nice kind of pace and everything. And it's not just one of them really kind of dark, sad melodics. It's just a really laid-back, fun piano bass sung verse. So it's just great just to see. I've had an intro, I've had a heavy track, now I've got this. And then the track after this, Holding On, is a full like melodic track. So again, it's just like every track I'm getting something completely different, which is great because Reunion did not do that. So even though Holding On, it goes completely melodic, which I really like because it's a change of pace, there is a big problem with this. This is the worst track on the album. So obviously there's going to have to be a reason to that, because I basically said I like that it's melodic, and I do like that. But the whole track is all melodic. Now, sometimes I would like it if there is a melodic track near the end, it kind of rises up and gets more of a high energy. But if not, because a track can be full on melodic and it can be perfectly fine. But because it's all mellow and everything, you need to kind of keep changing things up and everything, and restructure certain aspects of the song instead of just completely redoing the same thing, unless it gets quite dull. And you need a solo. Obviously, because this is a melodic track, therefore you can actually do a solo that is going to be completely different to that of other tracks where there's a lot of high energy going on. You can't have a high energy song and then go and do some kind of blues. You could, it just wouldn't, be as easily fitted in. You'd have to kind of approach it in a certain aspect. But Holding On, the lead guitarist could have definitely done a really emotional, heartfelt solo, maybe a bit of blues, so he does a note, pauses for a period of time, goes again. I mean, we could have seen something completely different from him and show his range and other kind of genres that he can touch on because it's a melodic track. But this is a problem with bands. Even Borealis does this, where when it comes to a melodic track, they decide to completely rip out solos. And I don't understand it, because if it's a melodic track, there's not a lot going on musically. It's just very kind of straightforward and bare bone, which you need to fill it with something. So I don't know why people do this, but it's not Solaris' fault and just Borealis. Loads of bands do this, and I just don't understand the reasoning, because obviously so many do it. But I just think it's really silly. I think it's silly to leave a solo out of any track. I think every track should have a solo. And especially when Holding On, the whole thing is flat out melodic. It doesn't elevate to a different aspect. There is no solo to break something up. And even in the melody itself, there is nothing changing. The song kind of goes on and keeps following the same pace and same style. It's just like, yeah, as the album's going, Holding On has completely gone to another place, which I like. But it doesn't take long for me to kind of get a bit bored of it and fed up, and I want to start on another, track and just kind of get over this one, because once you've heard it for a minute or so, you kind of heard the whole thing. So that is a problem. But again, it is a great show for the lead singer, because as I say, Reunion didn't really have any kind of part where she could go into this realm. And then Limbo, even though it went down, it was more of a kind of poppy, fun, relaxed verse. This is proper melodic and low and everything. So again, it's just seeing her voice in such a different kind of genre, completely different aspects. It's not a different genre, but you know, just a completely new kind of realm that her voice is now in. So it's nice to hear that, but it's just a shame because you get fed up of it. Not her voice, just the song, because after a minute, which is great, it's just like, well, you're just kind of repeating it, and that's a problem. But Arrival, again, we are going back to the heavy side again. Starts with the lead again. It's musical, so the guitarist again just off the bat starting the song with a lead, and it's all musical and sounds absolutely fantastic. So the second the song starts, you're already having a whale of a time because of his amazing leads. With the verse in this one, even though it's heavy, it's still different to kind of anything off the first album, because the way the guitar goes, the way the vocalist delivers. In the first album, Reunion, Sarah seems to kind of always just, she's singing and her voice sounds great, but she doesn't seem, at least to me personally, to have emotion to her that, you know, even though if she's singing in the same pitch, if you sing with different emotions, you can always shift that pitch to have like different kind of feel to it and like vibe. So you can do the same kind of tones and pitches and everything, but when you kind of put emotion into that, you can completely shift it to sounding a bit different. So with this album, Darkest Days, it definitely sounds like she actually puts emotion into it. Not that I don't think she was trying in Reunion, I'm not saying that. I do think when she went in to do that album, she had a fun time doing it, and I do believe she was trying, but I think that the fact it was the first album and the excitement of it all, maybe she just didn't really sit down and actually have time to think about it. She was just really excited, and it may have been overlooked. Obviously, this is just what I think. I could be completely wrong. Sarah may have really actually been trying, and Sarah may actually say there's not really anything different to this album. It will make me sound like an idiot. But yeah, with this, it definitely comes across to me that she just has a lot more in the way of range. So the verse here has like different kind of pacing. The guitars again do kind of chugs and slight pauses and everything, and Sarah, although still sounding high, it's not as high as she used to be. It's a bit more restrained here, and you can tell there is a bit of like an act she's putting on, and this is basically that emotion. She seems to be kind of putting a bit of emotion into it. The chorus for this one, again, is something completely different than I've ever heard from Sarah, which is phenomenal. It sounds like she really kind of strains the vocal cords, because it just sounds, it's not whiny. It's nothing like whiny actually. It's just like she's pushing her vocals, but also kind of restraining it, if you kind of get what I'm trying to say. So she's pushing her voice, but she's also restraining the sound as well, making it sound like powerful yet restrained. So that is kind of the kind of vibe she's putting off in this chorus. So there is a lot of energy to it, but it just sounds like she's really straining as she's pushing these lyrics out, which she hasn't really done in previous albums, nor even in this album until this point. So again, this album, again with her voice having range, and near the second part of the chorus, she opens it up a bit and then stops kind of holding it back and restraining it, and the lead actually comes in, so the guitarist is then joining in with her and everything, just making the chorus have two separate parts and making the chorus have two completely different kind of energies about them. So again, it's just layers and just adding more to the song instead of everything being like straightforward, this is the verse, this is the chorus, that is it. I like the fact that they do certain things, like not a simple intro, but put a lead there, and then after the chorus do another lead, and then let's change this chorus up a bit. So this will be the first part and this will be a different part, then we'll have a pre-chorus and everything. And then the verse can start this way, but then the second verse can be a different way. I like that they do this. The solo for this one takes a long time to get to, and by that Sarah leaves, so then you have what is the solo coming, but it takes a long time to get there. So you have the lead actually happening, but it's not necessarily a solo, it's basically one of these leads that build up to it, but it takes a long time. It's quite weird. He does keep changing it up, but it takes a while for him to actually change it. So there's a long section of him doing a lead, which sounds great, but it goes on for a fair while. Then he actually changes it and you're like, okay, here it comes. But no, that actually isn't it, that's just it changing and then still going. And then it gets to a solo, which if you kind of look at the kind of on your whatever you're listening to, if you can see where that starts and when the solo gets there, it's just like there's such a massive chunk of the song which is mostly just that, and it's just a little weird. I don't mind the build up to his solo, I just kind of think maybe it was a little too long. But the solo again, it is great. The build up was great, what he was doing, it's just he did it maybe too long. So yeah, Arrival again, great vocals and great range with the vocals throughout the song, and then great leads and everything, because we've had the kind of lead intro, and then we've had kind of leads in the chorus, and then we had the lead build up to the solo, then we had the lead solo. So yeah, fantastic track, and lot of energy, but then the chorus with that kind of strain and everything, it's like, oh, that's got such emotion to it. But then the second part's like, oh, this has energy because of the lead and everything. So yeah, a lot to it. So the next track is Dear Saviour. So Dear Saviour is definitely their most epic song on this album. It's the longest song, around 6 minutes, and there's just so much going on in this song, so that is basically why it is the most epic on the album. So it starts off just with quiet orchestra, just like being very quiet, very subtle, and then it builds up, and then the whole band comes in with the orchestra, with a bit of choir and everything. There is no lead or anything, everything's just kind of restrained, just kind of being very kind of dark and very moody and emotional and everything. You got the choir going, the orchestra, the band, everything's just sounding really, really dark. And then it gets to the verse, so yep, no lead. The verse is pretty much just piano, I don't think there's bass or anything. There may be some, subtle sounds of orchestration maybe, but for the most part I think it's just piano, as well as Sarah D, and that is pretty much the whole first verse, just her and the piano. So it's like, this is great. Again, we're getting a complete new range to her voice, as well as a complete new aspect of Solarus, because we haven't had that in Reunion, besides maybe them last tracks, but they didn't really do it like this. When the chorus comes in, the sound does actually pick up, so the whole band come in again. Orchestration going and everything. Sarah obviously putting a bit more power into her vocal delivery and everything. And the second verse, you got not the piano, but actually guitars, and they're very kind of dark and broody and pretty aggressive actually, but dark. And the so she's having to sing along to that and everything. Obviously this is now completely different to the first verse. Chorus comes back, and the solo is a really long solo. It's like got two separate parts to it, so you got the first part and the second part. There's not really a pause to distinguish parts. It's basically just there's a part in the solo where it actually it changes and shifts to something new. So that solo lasts a good fair while. It could be over a minute, I think. So a great solo that kind of ends into piano and everything, which then goes back to the piano part of the song, and then it ends on the chorus again. So a lot going on to this song, and a lot of range. We had the really heavy dark verse, really soft melodic verse, massive long solo, and then a chorus which again is very kind of big and mature sounding chorus with the kind of orchestra. I think the orchestra's there. The orchestra is there. The choir may or may not be, and then obviously a lot of range to Sarah, and it's just great to hear that, because as I say, coming off of Reunion, I wasn't really sure if Sarah had range to her. So it's good to get that, because she really does have a really amazing voice. So it's good to hear, as well as range of the band as well, because that was kind of lacking in Reunion. So next track, Embers in the Rain. So Embers in the Rain is back to the heavy nature of the band. There's not exactly a lead per se, but there is at the same time. In the previous tracks, you can tell it's a lead because of the kind of tonal shift his guitar makes to that of the rhythm tone that he uses. So this is kind of still in the rhythm, but he keeps shifting and changing the intro by putting fast stuff in there, and so it's not just one simple kind of intro or anything. He is putting speed in certain aspects and things, and putting really cool leads in, but it is not exactly on his lead channel, I think, with the lead tone. Then the second part of the intro, off of the heavy part, and then the kind of speed parts that the guitarist is putting in, goes to a kind of borealis, the offering kind of style of intro. So you've got the orchestra coming in, and it's very big and grand. They cut the orchestra out as the verse comes in, but the verse of this, it just has so much energy and power, it's ridiculous. The riff is really aggressive and heavy. It sounds amazing, it's not simplistic at all either. Sarah D's vocals on this verse as well, so much power and energy, and her voice again, even though high, she definitely has it under control instead of it just being blistering and ear-piercing. It's high, it's powerful, there's so much energy, and it just sounds incredible. And then the chorus, the orchestra comes back again, so it makes the chorus sound very epic and huge and grand. And then Sarah has a part where she says the line, "Where are we now, where are we now?" And it's unlike, yet again, anything I've heard from her. So I believe there is an effect in what she's doing, where she's going, "Where are we now, where are we now?" I think there's layered vocals, so I think she's gone in and sung that, and then they kind of laid herself to make it sound like there's about 3 or 4 of her singing at the same time, where she goes, "Where are we now, where are we now?" But even then, I believe she is singing it in a different kind of style and range than what she's done previously. So there's even that. So it's just like, this sounds incredible when you're saying, where are we now, where are we now? It's just so much energy. It's so cool sounding as well. And it's even more range to Sarah's voice, which I didn't get anything like that off Reunion, apart from maybe the odd thing here and there. Like, I say that there was no range and she was monotone, but no, she did have range, there just wasn't a lot of it. And I don't think she was well controlled, but I do believe that may have been because the band wasn't really synergizing with her. But yeah, she has high saws and everything, which sound great. The Where Are We Now part is so cool when she does that. I really like that part in the song. And then the orchestra being in that and a heavy part of it as well, it just makes everything so huge. And then again, the verse, she has such power to her voice and everything, and the riff of that is so kind of intense and aggressive. The solo, again, amazing. Maybe a tad too short. It could have probably been done with a little bit longer. It's a long solo. It's not, you know, like I've gone in and I've done about 4 seconds. It's just the guy is an sensational guitarist. He is so incredible. Just for, you know, a decent length is probably too short for a guitarist of this caliber, you know, so I am complimenting. So it is good. There is range to the solo he delivers. I just think it needed a bit more to it. So that's the only complaint. Other than that, Embers in the Rain is just a very heavy, high energy track with epic parts to it and great range from Sarah. Like her vocal delivery in this track is just out of this world. It's unbelievable. So the next track following this is My World. So the start of My World is going back to the guitarist doing his typical thing where he's doing a lead. Again, it's incredible amount of energy. There is a fair amount of speed to it as well, but he maintains musicality to it. It's not just this is speed, that's it. He makes it musical, he makes it catchy and everything, which can be quite hard to do when it comes to shred. But he pulls it off, which is what he should do, and he does it, so well done. And yeah, that is pretty much the majority of the entire intro is him just doing that amazing lead with great energy. It sounds like a lot of fun. When the verse comes in, it follows sortly in line with Embers in the Rain. It is, you know, kind of heavy, but with energy. I think Embers in the Rain had more of a kind of energy and lift to it. My World, even though the energy's still there, it just kind of doesn't seem to be on the kind of range as epic as Embers in the Rain kind of was. The chorus though is different, because with Embers in the Rain you had that Where Are We Now and everything and great saws. My World doesn't have that Where Are We Now, Where Are We Now kind of part. It just opens the sound up, so the sound opens, therefore it has to be filled with like longer kind of holds on words and longs on instruments and things. So everything's opened up, and then the vocalist kind of has to saw in order to you know, fill the gap, because she can't sing quickly, so everything she holds on to it. So because of this, her vocal delivery, each word she has power and weight to it. So it just shows an incredible amount of power, this chorus with Sarah D's vocal delivery. It is so powerful and has so much energy to it, and it's so open with saws and everything that it's just like, you just basically sit there and it's just like, this is just so incredible. Just her voice has so much power to it. And again, she's using range. Same thing with the verse. It's not basically this is the kind of tone and pitch I'm using. She keeps kind of changing it, so she'll be singing along and then she'll start kind of raising her voice a little and then bring it back down again, so it's not monotone, there's range to it. And then, as I say, the chorus, she just projects with power and everything, and yeah, it's just so much power and energy to singing, and then the verse is just a lot of power, but you know, it's constricted compared to the chorus. So heavy track with a lot of power and energy and everything, and not the kind of same type of energy as Embers in the Rain, which I think had a bit more of a fun energy to it. This is a bit of a kind of more kind of darker energy. My World. Solo, I'm not going to repeat myself. It's this guy. That's as much as I need to say. You know it's incredible then. So we'll leave it at that. So let's get on to the next track, which is Requiem of the Fallen Part 2. So Requiem of the Fallen Part 2 is a follow-up, not of anything off of this album, but the previous album, which was Reunion. So I kind of find it weird how they kind of say Requiem for the Fallen Part 2, because Reunion was a concept album that told the story, therefore Requiem for the Fallen in that album would have been a story part in that song. So this is Part 2. I don't know if this means that this album, because I haven't gone into the lyrics, so I'm sorry if this is a concept. I don't know if Requiem for the Fallen Part 2 lyrically seems that it's a part of the story and the rest of the pieces are missing, or if it's in with the concept of this album, if it is a concept, or if Requiem for the Fallen Part 2 lyrically stands on its own, because I haven't gone into the lyrics, as I say, to actually see what Part 2 is like, if it's the same lyrically, therefore it's missing the other pieces, or if it basically is focusing on just a topic of a lost one or something. I'm not sure. But it follows kind of in line as the previous album, Requiem for the Fallen. So it starts off with a lead, again, just because it's incredible and it just adds fun and energy to the song. So it would be better than just, you know, just going in with just kind of simplistic chords or anything. So great lead into the song. Similar kind of lead that I think he did in the first album. I can't remember, but obviously musically it does kind of sound the same, but there is a bit more energy to it. Sarah's voice has a bit more range to it, and then the music you know, fits with her voice more. The choruses both also kind of share a similar kind of vibe and everything, but this Part 2, obviously it has just everything is just better. It's done way better. The instruments sound better, Sarah sounds better, the way the song kind of flows and everything is better, there's more range to this one. So it's just a lot better, but it does sound a fair bit like Requiem for the Fallen, the first one. Part 2, they basically just changed it up a little bit and everything just sounds a lot better, basically. So let's get on to the next track, The Final Hour. So this is the second melody of the album, The Final Hour. So the first one was, what was it called, the first melodic? The first melodic was Holding On. Now, if you remember from what I said about that, was it was mostly just piano as well as Sarah, maybe a bit of orchestration in there, but the song didn't really lift to any different area. It didn't lift. The rest of the band never really came in. There was no solo, so the song, although good, didn't really do much. So after like the first minute or so, you kind of heard everything, so the rest is sort of pointless. So with The Final Hour, does that kind of go the same? Well, again, it starts off just kind of piano with a bit of orchestration and as well as Sarah, and it sounds great. Obviously, again, I didn't get anything like this on Reunion, so I'm glad to have this. But so far, obviously, I've had it with Holding On. I've got the same kind of thing here. Obviously, it's a bit different, but yeah, just piano and Sarah with a bit of orchestration, just like the previous melodic. But when it goes into the second verse, it's still exactly the same, but then before it hits the chorus, the band come back. So it's like finally, this is what you should have done in the previous one. So the guitars come in and they're heavy, and then it's dun 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 dun. It does that typical kind of build up, and then it hits the chorus, and then obviously it sounds different because the whole band's there and everything, giving it a new kind of energy, a bit of new flavour and stuff. Sarah changes her voice, it sounds a little different, and you also have a solo, which obviously kind of goes with the song, so it's got a fair bit of melody to it, still a little bit of speed, but this is what you should have done with the previous track, add kind of layers to it, because that track now, it's just like, well, it really is not the best, because this is now the best melodic, because there's more to it. Why would the other one be better when there's just less to it? I've got the piano and Sarah by herself, so you've delivered that in this track, and you've delivered it going to a higher level, and you've delivered a solo to it as well. As for the other one, it's just her and the piano. So I don't know, I just think it's just a really odd thing to do when in the same album with the final hour you kind of started it off the same, but then changed it and did the right thing. But then in the same album you did it, but then I don't know. So yeah, this should have been kind of the same as Holding On. So yeah, it's great, because before this, obviously Requiem for the Fallen Part 2 had high energy, so did My World, so did Embers of the Rain. Dear Saviour was that kind of epic kind of song. So now the fact that we've brought it back down again and everything, just obviously keep changing it up so we're not, you know, getting all the same kind of thing. So great that that's there. And then it's on to the next track, which is the final track, which is in Memoriam. Memoriam? Yeah, In Memoriam, I think. So this last track, similar to all the others, it starts with, you know, the lead guitarist doing a lead, and then as it hits the verse, the verse is heavy, but it doesn't really have the kind of energy that My World or Embers in the Rain kind of had. It kind of flows along at the same kind of feel as My Darkest Days, so it's a little bit more kind of dry, the verse with this one, instead of it kind of sounding a bit kind of bigger like Embers in the Rain and that. So yeah, so that's kind of how the verse goes. I think the chorus is kind of cut up into two parts. The first part of the chorus, there's orchestra there and everything, and then the second kind of part, Sarah just kind of lifts her voice up into you know, that kind of high tier energy kind of stuff, and sounds incredible. And then the lead guitarist leading into the verse, doing the lead again, and then you got the verse, and then you got your really epic solo. So just ending on again high energy, lots of leads. There's like you lead in the intro, you lead before the second verse, then you lead solo, and then you've got the heavy kind of verse, you've got the two kind of separate kind of choruses, and then Sarah with high energy singing, and then a bit of dry and everything singing in the verse. And yeah, that's the last track. So yeah, this is pretty damn incredible, especially coming off a reunion, because I talked to the guitarist before this album obviously kind of came out, because it's not even out yet, it's out tomorrow. And I was saying, all I basically said was, is your album going to be different than Reunion? Because all Reunion is it kind of is like Purgatory, so is it going to be different, or are you going to kind of still follow in the lines of Borealis? And then I just said that he's an incredible guitarist. I didn't say anything about Sarah, I didn't say anything that your songs are all kind of exactly the same as each other, just with a few kind of changes, until you get to about track 8 or 9, and then you actually get something, but then it's a complete rip-off of a Borealis track completely. I didn't say any of that, because I just thought it would be a bit mean of me to say that, and he may be insulted, and I didn't really want to do that. And all he told me was, obviously he appreciated the words I said about his guitar skill, and he said the album is basically more of our own thing, so it's not really going to be us copying Borealis. I don't even know if he thought Reunion was kind of a clone of Borealis. He may not have thought that, so if he didn't, then I'm sorry. But obviously I've already stated why it's similar, and you know, lyrically the concept is exactly the same as Purgatory, just a bit of a difference. Lead-wise, the guitarist does have similarities to the kind of tone and the way the lead guitarist of Borealis play. Sarah has been in Borealis, and now she's in this, so there is that. Obviously, she can't help that. But then they introduce Matt, and then, you know, from Borealis, and then she's been in there, so it's just like weird because of that. Then there's the one track where they seriously did clone it from where we started, which is, I don't know the name of the track in Reunion, what the track is. It's just basically the first track where the verse goes melodic, and that when that happens and starts, just where we started, completely the same. No question about it, it's exactly the same thing. So, yeah, so with Darkest Days, as I've said, the singing is way better. Like, her voice is incredible in this album. So much range and variety to what I'm getting from her, with all the different kind of stuff they're doing, the melodies, and then the darker stuff, then the kind of poppy song that was in there with which was a lot of fun and high energy, and then the really high energy songs, high energy that's dark, high energy that's a bit lighter, then the different kind of melodies and everything. And then layering her voice being in the background in one of them, and then putting power. There's so much to her and everything, and it's just incredible to basically just hear how great her voice is, because with Reunion I just really was not getting it. I was just getting like, yeah, she has a good voice, but I'm not really getting she's a good singer from this. So I am sorry if you hear this and you take that as an insult. It's just, that is how I felt. So I am sorry, but I can't help that. But yeah, this is your newest album, and you sound amazing. You have an awesome voice, and you're an incredible singer with so much range and variety. And it really sounds like you're trying, and you're putting emotion in. It's incredible. So because this is your newest album, you should just take, you know, that and completely wipe clean what I think and say of Reunion. The guitarist pretty much is exactly the same as he was in Reunion, just absolutely incredible. A lot of range, great leads and everything. The songs as well keep changing. You don't just get tracks that all sound very similar. Each track has its own thing. Darkest Days, you have a kind of simple metal track. Limbo was really upbeat and poppy sounding, and yeah, it was just absolutely incredible, that song, just because it's just so different. Holding On, even though it's a melodic, it was great to get a melodic. Didn't do it very well, not well executed, but still. Arrival sounded great. Dear Saviour was a big epic track with orchestrations. Embers in the Rain had amazing energy, so did My World. Requiem of the Fallen Part 2, again, a lot going on. The final hour was the great melody of the album. So much diversity, so much range, so much talent with the vocalist and the guitarist, and then the keys as well, and then the bass in Limbo sounded awesome, along with Sarah and the drums. Everything has been improved on. How the singer has so much range, so much power and emotion to her voice. The guitarist just with so much lead and everything, making all the songs just sound so much fun, and providing such great guitar solos and leads for people who are massive guitar fans. He's not all about the one thing, like this is going to be shred, this is going to be melody. He has so much variety in every one of his solos, and it's all so well paced out. Incredible the way he does that. Each song sounds immensely different, with so much range, so much going on. You got the simple songs, the pop songs, the musical songs, and then you've got the darker songs, the melodic songs, the epic songs with melody, orchestra, and then heavy, and then orchestra, and all sorts of changes. Each song is got different aspects and pacing to them, so it's not just from track to track, but within each track there is a diversity. It's amazing. And then some songs, as I say, because of that orchestra and then choir and everything, some of these songs that sound so huge and epic. So putting a score on this, let's just get to it. This is an 8.5, which is exactly the same as I gave Borealis The Offering. That's the highest score I've given a Borealis album, so I do think this album is just as good as that. I prefer The Offering, that's just my opinion. If someone said they preferred this album, I would not question it, just be like, yeah, I can perfectly understand that. So I do prefer Borealis as a band. I think their guitarists have a bit more emotion to them. I like Matt's voice, I prefer this album over Purgatory as well as Fall From Grace, because Purgatory was a very dry album in sounds. It didn't have the epicness of The Offering and the kind of fun high energy of Fall From Grace. Fall From Grace, even though it had high energy, it was a relatively short album and lacked a fair few solos. So that's why this album's Darkest Days kind of outshined them two albums. So it took a while for Borealis to get to The Offering, as for this is just a second album, and Solarus has kind of got to that point of it's just really fun, well structured, easy to get into, and great singing, great guitar skills. There's a guitar solo on like every bloody track apart from that one, and then there is so many leads going on with this guy. It's incredible. So the only problem I have for them, for criticism, is just that melodic holding on. Just don't do that. And then from here on out, just basically carry on the way you're going and you'll be great. Basically just add more to it. So sometimes when a solo finished, it would go to a melodic part, but then it would just go straight to the chorus. I would say in the melodic parts actually do something with them sometimes, because I can't remember now, but there was songs which is just full-on heavy songs, and then you get to your solo, and then after the solo it goes to that melodic part, and then it builds into the chorus. It's just like, well, because all the song has been this, elongate that melodic part and then put Sarah in there as well as the rest of you, and then make the song longer with more variety, because you've lengthened it and put stuff in there and changed the song up from heavy to now completely melodic with Sarah. So just open these songs up a bit and then just give them even more range. That is basically it. And then with Sarah, even though there's a lot of range to this, I still would like to see even more. If she can go really, really, really deep with her voice, like really low, deep notes, and I think I've read somewhere that she's actually a trained opera singer, so I would like to actually hear her do some kind of like Nightwish crap, where there's a certain part of the song where she actually goes opera. So I don't know if she is fully capable of that, because some opera trained singers don't do the woo, really big thing. Because that second Nightwish singer, she's a soprano just like Tarja, but she obviously isn't operatic like Tarja, but she's still in the exact same bloody range. So I don't know if she can do that, but if she could, that would obviously be really incredible to hear that from her, and that would be something completely out there different. But yeah, 8.5. It's a great album. Really, really, really good, and on level with The Offering. I just personally prefer The Offering, but it achieves just as much as The Offering does, really. Massively epic parts, great solos, great vocals, so much range everywhere and everything, leads all over the place, epic choir parts and orchestra parts, making songs epic. It's a fantastic album, and coming off a reunion, it's incredible they basically came so far from that, seeing this is just the second album. So that is basically it. So I'll leave it there, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Until then, see you later. Bye.